What if your next opportunity isn't waiting in another online application, but in how you tell your story? When your career is on paper, every word counts. It's not just about listing what you've done, it's about showing who you've become, what you deliver, and where you're going next. Because clarity communicates confidence. If you've ever wondered how to stand out in a crowded market or how to translate years of experience into one clear, compelling message, this conversation is for you. This is the Your Next Success podcast, and I'm your host, Dr. Carolyn Sangal. I'm a life-first career coach and strategist on a mission to normalize questioning your career, because I believe each of us is made on purpose for a purpose only we can fulfill. The longer we live out of alignment with who we are, what we do best, and why we're here, the more we miss out, and the more the world misses out on what only we can give. The Your Next Success podcast is where we explore how to build a career that truly fuels your life. We talk about self-discovery, smart job search strategies, professional growth, and you'll hear stories from people who've navigated big career transitions themselves, so you can see what it's really like to make bold changes and feel inspired to create your own version of authentic success. One that is aligned, meaningful, and truly yours. Today, I'm joined by Amy L. Adler, president of 5 Strengths Career Transition Experts, a firm specializing in resume writing for executives and their teams. Since launching her business in 2009, Amy has worked with hundreds of leaders to help them tell their stories with clarity and power. Amy is one of the most credentialed professionals in her field, holding the Certified Executive Resume Master, Certified Master Resume Writer, and Nationally Certified Online Profile Expert designations. She's a past Torrey Award winner, current judge, an MBA graduate from Boston College, and the author of Courageous Career Change: Fearlessly Earn the Executive Role You Deserve. Her approach combines strategy, psychology, and storytelling to help executives earn roles aligned with both their expertise and their purpose. In this episode, Amy and I talk about how to make job search more human, how to move beyond generic bullet points and into real stories of impact. She shares what makes a resume work, how to use data to prove value, and why the best resumes don't just describe, they differentiate. We also explore the emotional side of transition, the fear, the uncertainty, and the surprising peace that comes when your story finally fits. Amy gives practical, compassionate advice for job seekers navigating change, and her insight will remind you that career storytelling is not self-promotion, it is self-clarity. If you've been applying and hearing silence, this episode will help you determine why and what to do next. Welcome, Amy, to Your Next Success. I am so thrilled to have you here today.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. So as you know, one of the things I love talking about is careers, career transitions. And so we are going to get to that you are an amazing resume writer, that you do phenomenal work with people to really help tell their story better. We'll get to that. But I'd love to kind of dial it back and rewind and talk about your story of how you got to be doing this wonderful, helpful thing. So as you think back to your childhood, tell me a little bit about it. Like, where did you grow up? What did you like to do?
I grew up in the eastern part of Pennsylvania, just north of Philadelphia, in a town that at that time I think had 2 traffic lights. And it was a lot of farmland. My elementary school abutted a cornfield and a dairy. It was very quiet and very peaceful. When I was in 5th grade, somebody asked me what I wanted to be when I grow up, because I guess you have to ask every 5th grader what they want to be when they grow up. And I said, is there some job where all I can do all day is just read books? Because that's how I spent all my free time.
Oh, wow.
Literally, if I didn't have to go out to recess and I got to spend, when there was ever indoor recess because of the weather or something, I was like, great, I get to sit and read a book and don't talk to me. I loved it. And people were like, no, that's not a job. Haha, that's really funny. But many years later, my first career, and actually my first academic experience post-college, was in book publishing. So I did,
Oh,
in
that's so
fact, get a
cool.
job where I was reading books all day. Not the really cool, fun fiction ones, but I worked in medical publishing for the most part.
Well, still cool though.
It was
Yeah.
fun. If there was a red pencil, I was holding it. I got to work really closely with the authors, and it was amazing. And then, so I did that for a long time. And then I went to business school and had to figure out kind of what I wanted to do, this sort of new education. So I did, and I worked in project management at a big website with medical content for a long time. And then I stopped working, and I was a stay-at-home parent to two amazing humans who are now adults.
Congratulations. Right? Like that's
Yeah, they made it to adulthood. I feel like we
right.
won.
I can't keep plants alive, but I have two humans that are still living. So
Honestly, I think humans are a little bit easier to keep alive, but they demand all kinds of attention that plants just don't. So anyway, after giving them all this attention, I was like, now that my kids are in school, I want to get back to me and what am I going to do? And I didn't know if I wanted to go back into publishing, but I wanted to use my education and I wanted to do something that fit my self-perception of being the person behind the scenes, doing what it takes to make somebody else look really, really good. And by happenstance, I wound up writing a resume for a friend of mine who's a great salesperson, not a great writer. So she said, I don't know if that's really true. That's what she said. And she's like, oh, I know you come from this background, mostly because people conflate editing and writing, which is, I guess, reasonable. But I wasn't really writing up until that point. I was just editing. And I wrote a resume and she got this interview and then she got an offer for the job. And I felt like, hey, I did something I didn't know was even a thing, and cast about for a while to figure out how to put this into action, and got a job writing resumes, working for another company, writing resumes. And that's honestly how most people get into resume writing who don't come through HR, who don't come through some like talent acquisition or whatever it might be. I just came up through editorial, wrote a lot of resumes those first couple of years, wrote a lot of resumes on my free time, some free time I didn't have because I still had little kids who were in school part of the time, right? And a couple of years into it, I started on my own. And that was probably 13, 14 years ago now. And
wow.
I've been running my own show ever since. It was hard to part ways with this person I considered a mentor and a friend, and we stayed friends and there was no hard feelings. I wanted to test my mettle.
There's very few pieces of content that I latched onto as helpful as far as resumes. But as I was preparing for our episode, I was like, oh my gosh, of course, Amy worked for this place, because I thought that place has some really great content and absolutely helpful. So, but how did you find that job? So you did a resume for a friend, it worked out well. And then you thought, let's see if there's companies, and that one just popped up, or how did it work out?
Pretty much. She was advertising to hire somebody.
Wow.
And I was perusing, I guess, Indeed or Craigslist or something like that, trying to figure out what can I do with the time that I have, because at that point my time was, bracketed by what my kids were requiring of me, because I wanted to be a parent to them too. And I guessed. I gave it a shot and she took a chance. And she was so supportive and encouraged me to get certified initially, and encouraged me to go to my first resume writing conference. And I guess that must have been in 2010. And she also encouraged me in my sort of newness to the industry to put a submission into the Tory Awards.
What are the Tory Awards?
So the Tory Awards, the toast of the resume industry, is sponsored by Career Directors International, which is where I have most of my certifications through. And it's, I think, one of the oldest competitions for resume writers. And so, of course, I found the best one I'd worked on and submitted it and got all excited. And of course, I was heartbroken when in my very first time, I didn't even get a nod. I didn't even get a nomination. I don't know what I was thinking. Of course I didn't. But the weird thing is, I probably submitted something the following year or two as well. I have here, I can tell you, 2012, I framed my award.
That's awesome. Yeah.
Yeah. I submitted for the executive resume writing category, which is pretty substantive. There's 9 categories usually, some number of categories, but I won first place that year out of never having won anything before. And I did not know what to make of that. I didn't know what to think. I didn't know how to handle it. I couldn't believe it. I still can't believe it. It was amazing. And I won. I placed again the following year, and then I took a year or so off, and I've been judging ever since. And the thing about judging is knowing how life-changing it is. To be nominated is what drives me, because I want people to feel that magic. I don't know how it happened for me. I can't even tell you, but I'm so glad to be part of people's successes now. I guess it's the same thing. I guess anybody hearing this now is going to know that I'm a judge, but it's not exactly a secret, but it's also mostly double blind. I don't know who I'm reading, and they don't know me particularly until the whole thing comes out.
Do they have a conference or a ceremony, or you just find out in the mail? Like, how does that work out?
Let's see. The first time that I didn't win was at a conference, so I had to just like sit there.
I would have been like,
yeah,
don't cry, don't cry, don't cry. Be happy for somebody.
But I will tell you what happened when the first time they sent an email out. But I was busy doing whatever I was doing. And then the president, I don't know if she remembers this, the president of the society called me on the phone. And I'd been doing some volunteer work, so it wasn't altogether weird that she would have reached out. I'm like, hey, what's going on? Tell me, what can I do to help you? And she's like, are you kidding me? And I was like, what? Have you seen your email? No, I haven't. Yeah, so that's how I found out.
Oh, that's cool.
And now I think they just do it in email. The conferences for that particular society haven't happened, I think, for a while. I think COVID made a mess of a lot of things. The conference that I've been participating in quite heavily is the National Resume Writers Association, which is different because it's a nonprofit kind of member-run organization. And my colleague and I presented together last year, and we're presenting together again in a month. I like to be with my people, whether it's through this organization or through the other one. The idea that there are other people doing this thing that most people don't even know is a business or a service means we get to hang out for 2-3 days once a year and remember why we all do this and support each other and teach each other and learn from each other. It's awesome.
How many official resume writers do you think there are, like in those organizations and all that? Like, everybody needs a resume at some point in their life. Everybody realizes that they need help. Not everyone realizes that there are indeed certified professionals genuinely loving doing this and helping other people. But how many, is this like a 10 or is it like hundreds?
Yeah, probably hundreds. So there's a couple of professional societies that confer certifications, which I promise are hard won. They're not, you just write a check and they send you something. It's not like that at all. It's tests and portfolio reviews and continuing education and all the things you have to do. So I don't know how many there are, but I can say that the people who commit to the industry by putting in the time, getting continuing education, whether it's in conferences or other ways, because there's plenty of ways to do it, going the extra mile to get certified, paying attention to what the societies are doing. These are head and shoulders above the scam artists, there's no other way to say it, that exist on social media platforms that are really giving resume writing a bad name. Mm-hmm. And I think if this is what people hear all the time, they're going to understandably tar everyone with the same brush.
Yeah.
But I have not met a legitimate resume writer yet who I thought was out to scam people. Mm-hmm. I think people care so much about doing right by the people who place their trust in us.
Yeah.
I can't speak for every single resume writer anywhere, but I also haven't met a resume writer worth their salt who is pitching their services left, right, and center in a sort of in-your-face kind of obnoxious way. Everybody talks about what they do because this is what we do. It's our job.
Yeah.
But the ones who are spamming up your inbox with hire my person on Fiverr or whatever, not to slam Fiverr. I think Fiverr's great. Just people should check what they're getting themselves into and make sure they're talking to a legitimate person and that person's going to do right by them.
And so what does the process look like? If somebody wants to have help writing their resume, how does that even work? One of the maybe wrong ways to go about it that many people do is take out the last version of their resume and just try to quickly modify a tiny bit and give the new version. But even if that last version hadn't been written amazingly or from the ground up professionally, it could be a little bit limiting. So let's say it's me and I come to you and I'm like, Amy, here's the deal. I now want to go find a job working for somebody else. I've got all these experiences that may or may not align with what I'm trying to do. How do you help people sort that out? What's the process?
So there's all kinds of ways to do this right. All kinds of ways. The one way to do this wrong is to not engage with the individual, for me not to ask you as many questions as I could think of about what you've done and how well you've done it and what you want to do next. To refrain or avoid those hard questions makes the work very easy. It's easy to rearrange words on the page.
Yeah.
It's also not resume writing. I don't know what it is, actually. Maybe that falls somewhere into the unsavory side of kind of what I was talking about before. As a resume writer, I would want to know every last thing about you, certainly enough for me to be able to say, I know what she knows how to do. Here's the proof as to how well she has done this in all of these situations over these many years. And I also know where she's going.
Yeah.
So I can take that body of knowledge that is her experience and frame it for the next thing that the future audience understands why she's standing in front of them. Like they should know I exist, right? As a resume writer, I am completely invisible. I should be. Although I think probably smart recruiters and hiring teams know when a resume has been professionally done.
Well, I could definitely tell when ones were getting my attention when I was doing recruiting versus the ones that just straight didn't, right? The ones that were listing every single thing somebody had ever done without actually relating to the job at hand or why they wanted it. Ones that didn't say, an objective of what they were actually looking for if they had a varied experience or hadn't kind of tied it together. Those ones didn't get or the ones that read like a CV with everybody's publications and it was a job that didn't require publication. So those were my standouts. But hey, who knows? Perhaps I helped somebody that did have a professionally written resume. But as you look at resumes, maybe the first version somebody gives you, what stands out to you as far as these are criteria that make a great one in your eyes and these are criteria that are not so great?
I would say people hire me because they know they need help. So I am judgment-free about what crosses my desk, mostly because perhaps maybe once a year this isn't true, but the 99 point whatever percent of the time, rest of the time, these people know that they need something different. They know that they need something new. So I ask for their existing resume, not to point a finger at them, but to help them understand why there's so much more. This is almost universally the case, why there's so much more to who they are and what they stand for and what they're good at than their resume. The typical things that I would see normally are not enough detail, too much of this is what HR thinks my job is, which is plus or minus the truth, right? It could be close to it, but it's not always the truth. And no objective measurement of how well they did that thing. So a salesperson might talk about number of outreaches per day. And these might be across various modalities. Maybe it's phone calls, or maybe it's meeting people face-to-face, or whatever it's going to be, or emails. Then what kind of presentations are they giving? What kind of conversions are they yielding? And these are all things that can be measured. So not every job in every case has something that can be measured, but probably 80 to 85% of jobs have stuff that can be measured. One notable thing that I learned very on isn't very measurable is audits. Audits are either you pass or you don't pass.
Right.
And of course, if you don't pass, you can have remediations and that kind of a thing. But it's on or off, yes or no. Whereas most jobs are not quite that black and white, and they have that measure output or yield or deliverables or dollars. And these are incontrovertible facts. The person has delivered this many sales dollars or hired this many people, whatever it might be. So the person who's the end user of this resume, the hiring team, can say that they don't want somebody who's sold this much stuff or hired this many people, but they can't say what that person did or the information that person's reporting about what they did. They can't say that's wrong or that's false information. They can just make an evaluation as to whether they want that thing.
Yeah, when people put in a bullet point what they were supposed to do, but not actually talking about what they actually did in some sort of quantifiable way, it's hard, right? Because everybody may have been supposed to uphold safety standards, right? But if they helped develop 5 new SOPs for safety or something, that's a really helpful quantification as far as like, if anybody looks at their resume and you first pull your job description and you copy a lot of that, not the way to go. But maybe tell me about a time when you had to do that responsibility.
Absolutely.
How well, how much, how many, all of those things. I agree 100% with that. What are some other tips that you have as far as like how somebody can, obviously, how somebody can get a great resume would be to work with a professional such as yourself. And in the world of AI, when so many people now think that whether they have the free version of ChatGPT or they pay $20 a month, they think, this is going to be just fine. Help them understand what's limiting in that respect and how a real professional can elevate that.
If we start from the premise, I'm so glad you asked this question. If we start from the premise that every person is inherently interesting, thoughtful, and probably good at their job in the unique way that they are good at their job. So I'm good at my job in a certain way, you're good at your job in a certain way, and other people who do similar things to us are good at their jobs in their own way. And just because we show up our way doesn't mean everybody else will show up our way.
Right.
So if we own that and share that kind of a story, the resume can be about no other person than the individual for whom it's written. And it's, of course, like I said, my job to learn as much as possible about that person so I can put on their thoughts and their perceptions and their wins and the way they feel about stuff and be them on paper so they can own this document that is uniquely about them. ChatGPT is not quite as insightful. I was speaking with a hiring manager some time ago who I saw this post on LinkedIn and I had to reach out because it was the craziest story, that she was hiring for a writer, a marketing job. So it was writing involved, and was getting identical cover letters for the role from various people. And apparently it's just a thing. You take that job posting, throw it into some large language model, and you get something spit out. But anyone else who does, that's going to get the same thing because the ChatGPT or what have you doesn't know any more about you. At that point, it knows nothing about you, but doesn't know any more than what you tell it. So, of course, it's going to give just what it can interpolate from all the data that's out there, which is the same access that everybody else has. So nothing sounds unique. And the same is true, I imagine, if somebody threw a job posting in there and says, write me a resume. Except now we're in a world of hurt because the language model will start pulling things that might not be true or guessing or making stuff up. They call hallucinating, right?
Yes.
And it might say, speaks French fluently. And you're like, I don't speak French. I don't understand where this came from. And then you get called on that in your interview or in the first round of conversations. Then you have to come clean that you don't, in fact, speak French, even though your resume says so. So this has this enormous impact of making it really hard for the job seekers because they're trying to do something on the quick and trying to save time or whatever, but they look silly and it's ineffective for them. And the whole process gets gummed up because there's these dozens of AI-driven resumes and cover letters that are so perfect that they can't possibly be real. And then when the hiring team tries to call the people behind these documents to corroborate all this data, it's just not there. So really nobody wins. I mean, 0 people are winning when ChatGPT is offered free reign in the process.
That's amazing that the job, as the example, was marketing related, where writing was a key component. And you'd think those people have amazing skills, education, knowledge, experience, but for a quick shortcut to then have their cover letters be nearly the same as other people's, like, oh my goodness, how terrifying is that? Oh. So now, an interesting thing that I thought was,
imagine what your life would be like if your career aligned with who you are, what you do best, and actually fueled the life you want. At Next Success, we support all ages and stages through career transitions, from students exploring majors or careers to job seekers actively searching or reimagining their next move to professionals committed to self-awareness and leadership growth. Stay connected and explore what's possible at nextsuccesscareers.com and follow Next Success Method on LinkedIn, YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook.
Also kind of cool about your story and your career is after a while of having advanced degrees, doing all this work, you then went back to school. Tell us about that. Like, what kind of prompted that, and I think it's amazing. I think it's an amazing skill set.
I feel outed.
Outed in a great way, but you are more than just a resume person. You also have amazing diversity of skills and assets, and in a wonderful computer world, who wouldn't want to have that? So, but
well, you're so kind.
Yeah,
but you're right. Yes, I did do this. So I have a graduate work, but I always, also when I was in 5th grade, I thought the coolest thing was computers were just becoming available to the point where they could be in our classrooms occasionally. And I thought this was the most fascinating thing ever. And I didn't know anything about how to program. I knew nothing about how they worked. But I thought this was, like, I saw something really interesting. But of course, I was eased into languages. So, of course, English, because this is what I do every day, but also Spanish. And then in college, I studied Russian for a little while. And
Oh, wow.
it was just like this thing that I knew how to do. Like, I loved it. But for whatever reason, I chose to do computer science as a science class in high school. And no one ever said, even then, this is language. You were learning a language. And I think if I had made that connection, I would have gone to college for computer programming. But people were like, you have to study language. But language and computer science just somehow, like, there was, the Venn diagram didn't overlap. So I always had this idea that I wanted to learn. And I started at the community college just before, actually right as COVID hit. Our first semester was cut short and we had to do everything virtually. I guess it was in March or something. And I luckily didn't have to repeat, freshman English
Thank God.
or whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
But
That's
I
the
got
great
to
thing
do-
about college credit. They stay forever, which is so...
But I was like, well, if you want me to, I will. I got to do a full Associate of Science in Computer Science just because I wanted to learn. And I have used that work. I don't do it professionally, but in the way that I do what I do with my resume writing clients is heavily based on this sort of technology backbone that I never would have been able to do without having had that experience. So I don't regret it for a second. It was more like a hobby than a career path, but I'm so glad I did because I get to use it in ways that I think my colleagues probably don't.
Yeah.
I found ways to simplify my life. I like the operations aspect of it.
Oh, that's nice. So what are some ways that you simplify your life? Do tell. What are these background processes?
Okay, so here's one. I use the Google Workspace ecosystem for reasons that don't matter here, but I am heavily invested in this now. I pay my monthly fee and I get all this access to stuff. I wanted to be able to download my Google Calendar to a spreadsheet so I had copies of everything and then I could do something with the data that came out of that. So every night I have a cron job that runs and I download the days prior appointments and they get all sorted into different types and then I can keep track of who I talked to, what the purpose of the call was, other stuff like, dentist appointments and stuff that gets filtered into, other mess of things. And now I have an ongoing spreadsheet that captures everything and I don't have to do it by hand.
Oh, that's so amazing. And plus, even, I guess, for trying to figure out what was work time versus not work time, Yeah.
Goodness, if I did that.
How has your definition of what you thought success was, changed throughout the ebbs and flows of your career? Like, when you were little, what did you think it was to be successful? What were examples of that? And then as you kind of grew and had a family and even now, how is this definition changing for you over time?
So when I was that 11-year-old kid, this was in the 80s, and God bless the women who came before us and set up a situation or an environment or culture in which they told us, young girls, that we could do anything. I don't know if that was still 100% true when I was a young kid in the 80s. I think, as I said, I wasn't ushered into computer science, even though I had absolutely perfect grades in computer programming. I don't know whether I just didn't think of it or people didn't tell me or whatever, but when we were all children, the standard answers to what do you want to be when you grow up were mostly nurse, teacher, whatever. We didn't know. And I think because our parents didn't know. So for me, to be able to do what I do like this every single day and be exactly what in the chair that I think I was meant to be in professionally, and then to have the privilege, the absolute privilege of telling my daughters, who are now young adults, that they literally can do anything and mean it, because there has been enough time for the generational, I don't know, whatever it is, the gears, the works have moved forward sufficiently that there was no question that they could do anything they wanted. I actually once asked my older one, who was a science major in college, did you ever think, did anyone ever tell you you couldn't do this? And she looked at me like I had 9 heads. She was like, why would anybody tell me that? And I was like, this is the definition of success. This is the definition of success, in which we can do whatever we want, however we want. I actually also asked her, this is embarrassing in a way, but also emblematic, I think, of what's possible. So I've always worked at home because I can work wherever I want. And I love my desktop and I don't want to move it. And I once said to her, "Do you think I have a job?" And again, she looked at me like I had 9 heads. She's like, "Of course you have a job." As if to say, like, did you hit your head because did you just not come from your office where you do work things all day? But I wanted to see what her perception was and to know that whatever choices either of them make, it's on their terms. And they
Yeah.
get to be as successful as they decide they want to be with nobody holding them back. To me, that's miraculous. And this is, a generation and a half from a mom who was a social worker, my mother-in-law who was a teacher. Like, these were our role models, but things have
Yeah.
really, really changed.
Yeah, they have. That's one of the components I like to try to help people when they're trying to figure out what they want to do with their career. First, I'm like, okay, well, we have to talk about what would you love to do with your life first, and then how can your career fuel that? And so I kind of go through 8 different factors, and family is one of them. So the family you came from shapes a lot about what you think is even possible from work, what you know is available. And then the family, as it evolves, the family that you end up having, that shapes a lot, because I too was a stay-at-home mom for a while. I needed to drop off and pick up my kids, right? And then when I came back, I needed to have something that fit into that instead of detracted from it. So, but a lot of times people don't know and they don't understand what else is even out there. If it was, I mean, my mom was a nurse, my dad was a teacher, principal, superintendent. How did I get into science? I don't know. He told me to do it, girl. You should. I don't think teaching's going to support the lifestyle I think you want to be accustomed to. So you should do something with math and science related items. Now it's also so cool because there are so many interconnected databases to suggest to people, right? So you can look at your interests and your interest profile, and that will show up a bunch of jobs that align with your interests. I have an assessment that people can look at their natural abilities. How are they hardwired? Take that plus your interests and tie it into the whole government database of over 600 jobs for people who've gone to college. So it's like so cool. But I don't know about you, but I mean, I would look the career survey or whatever that came out, the guidance counselors, maybe a couple encyclopedias, but there was just not the ability back then to know more than our lens showed. So even that you had computer programming in high school, I think that's pretty amazing. Were you still in the smaller town at that point?
Yeah, I lived there up until I was, well, like my 20s, I guess. But yeah, it was a regional high school. So it was a good 25-minute drive. So
Yeah.
the bus ride was ridiculously long.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it was a pretty large catchment area. We had a mainframe. Must have been 1980 something.
Yeah.
And so they looked like desktops, but they didn't really function that way.
That's cool
So-
though. Yeah, I remember those, the separate rooms like nobody went into and they were hot, so it's just,
Exactly.
they tried to keep them cold. So of all the people that you've worked with, is there a particular success story or transformation story that really sticks out, that one of your favorites for whatever reason?
I have such a roster of clients, and I don't say that lightly or to toot my own horn. I am constantly astonished as to how many people I know by first name that sometimes I can't even fathom how they would get access to them.
Mm-hmm.
And it's amazing. And people are so interesting and so incredible. And I recognize that a certain type of person is going to be the kind of person to look for a resume writer. And then a certain person is going to be attracted to the way I do things versus the way somebody else does. So the end gets very diminished as the circles sort of get tighter. So I think a story that is pervasive across a lot of people without calling any single person out is that they don't know that applying for 1,000 jobs is a terrible idea.
Yes.
And they don't know what to do, but this, sort of hamster on a wheel kind of process seems to feel like work. And I think the biggest transformation happens in that mindset when they start to triangulate on just the things they want to do based on the things that they're interested in or the things that they're good at or stuff that they feel like doing or stuff they never want to do again. They leave that out. And then all of a sudden they start to experience this kind of success that they didn't know was possible. They might not take every job they're offered, and I hope that they're selective, but now at least they're getting past the gatekeepers and they're getting the kinds of conversations they ought to be having. And they can make more personal decisions about where they want to go next. And I think the mental health cost of doing this over and over and over again and not getting different results is so painful. And I get a front row seat to adults calling me and genuinely crying on the phone because they're at their wit's end. They have no idea what to do. And finally, somebody is just letting them talk. And I know, I mean, this whole show is about me talking and you asking questions, but my MO is just to let people say what they want to say.
Yeah.
And meet them where they are and help them feel like they are being well cared for in this absolutely chaotic sort of job search economy. Rose really quickly after it crashed in COVID, then it grew, and now we're experiencing the fallout.
Yeah, and it's depersonalized because when people are only doing the, online application that gets to an applicant tracking system that maybe rejects them and they don't ever talk to a human and they don't understand why they're not getting that results. Yes, to give that space and just listen. But well, what would they love to do next? How can you help them? How can you, because also the thing sometimes when people are pivoting by choice or by force, they feel like they need to keep doing what they just did. And as well as I, but they might not have liked it. They might have come home drained, and even though they could do it and do it really well, that might not be the version that they want to carry forward. So I love that, giving them the space to just be heard, be seen, be known, be valued, so that they could launch into that, to the next version. Now, you also wrote a book. Tell a little bit about that. You are just an amazing example of doing many, many things well and finding your sweet spot of how you want to serve the world. But you, at one point, recently wrote a book. What is the book about? Tell us.
So the book is Courageous Career Change, Fearlessly Earn the Executive Role You Deserve. And it's on Amazon. And it came out of the Job Search podcast, which was active. I was active on that for quite some time. And so there's a series of instruction about how to do this part well, or how to think about this aspect of job search. So putting them all together to address the one thing that, since I started resume writing, has been so clear to me, the biggest, most pervasive emotion that people feel is fear. So if they can get past or own the fact that they are afraid and that this is completely chaotic and they've never been in this situation before, they've been loyal employees, and all of a sudden, for whatever reason, they're not in an employment situation, we have to figure out what to do. Being okay with taking the next step, what I hope is pretty good advice. And also the express invitation, as I would offer to anybody listening. I live on the phone, and I'm glad when people call. I'm glad when people ask me questions, and I'm glad when I can be that support structure. Maybe I am a blend of my mother-in-law and my mom. Maybe I am a teacher and a social worker, although I'm not qualified for either. But I want to be ready to care for people wherever they are, whatever they need, help them not feel so afraid. Give them the sense that somebody who's been doing this a long time and does it every day can take up the reins and let them be their amazing selves, doing the thing that they do that I don't do. And I think nobody loses and everybody wins, because I get to keep doing the thing I love. I get that privilege day after day, and they get to return to the thing that they want to be doing. So I hope the book captures that sentiment of like how to get out of the mess, how to get out of being afraid and take some concrete action with stuff that actually works. So,
sounds amazing. Can't wait to read it. Now, what is next for you? What's coming as you envision what you'd love to be doing in the foreseeable future? What's on your horizon?
Well, in the immediate horizon, I'll be at the National Resume Writers Association, like I said, with my colleague in October, and we're going to be presenting together on helping clients helping them to help you by telling their stories well. That's the gist of the story. So we get to stand up in front of all of our colleagues and tell what we've learned, and then, of course, learn from them as well. Professionally speaking, the area that I'm expanding into, that I've already dipped a toe in over a couple of years, is to build more relationships with recruiters, because I would love to break down the barriers between resume writers and recruiters and to help us all understand that there doesn't have to be friction, that we can all be on the same side, and we can work to the benefit of the recruiters' clients, which are companies, our respective, my clients, they're job seekers, and build a structure that when it works and everybody contributes appropriately, the job seeker who's in the middle, they succeed. They get what they want. The company now has an amazing employee. The recruiter has a great reputation, and I get to, hang out in the background where I always was and say, yeah, look what I did.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Yeah. For me as now career coach, career strategist, if somebody's like, oh, do you write resumes? I'm like, no, I don't. I can read a resume and I can tell you what I liked and what I didn't like, but I'm just not the person to be modifying that resume. So I'm so glad that now I know you as somebody who is like, okay, you need somebody to be able to get detailed help on a resume. Amy is an amazing person that you need to talk to. You need to reach out to. And if you're not sure what you want to do next, what you love, who you are, what you do best, all of those things, I'm helpful, happy to help
That's
on that
you.
side. So where can listeners connect with you?
So I am most often on LinkedIn. My handle is Amy L. Adler. So first name, middle initial, last name. My website is 5strengths.com. And if you want to talk to me about your resume or your LinkedIn profile or anything else that's on your mind, you can find me at 5strengths.com/let's chat.
Oh, I love it. I love it. Well, thank you so much for sharing your story and also about how your definition of success has changed. You absolutely are authentically successful, living in the things that you love to do and how you help and support people. And it's just been such an honor to have you on our show.
Well, it has been an honor to be here. I'm so grateful.
Thank you so much.
Amy, thank you for bringing such grounded wisdom to this conversation and for showing us that clarity really is confidence. You can connect with Amy at 5strengths.com or find her on LinkedIn. If you've enjoyed this episode, please follow, rate, and review the show and share it with someone who's ready to write their next chapter with intention. Thanks for listening to Your Next Success with Dr. Carolyn Sangal. Remember, authentic success is yours to define and includes aligning your career to support the life you want.